Hey, Den of Geek fans, Aaron Sagers here, New York Comic-Con 2023, and we are in the Den of Geek Studios, and I am joined by a gentleman that I feel like he can't get rid of me because I keep talking to him, David Dastmalchian. Hey, man.
Hey, you can't get rid of me, Aaron. Let's be honest. Like, you, every time you turn, I'm like that ghost that lives in the closet and you're like home. You're like, oh, that was another con. We're done. It's over. And then you hear this like...
The creaking, yeah.
It's Dave Dastmalchian. There he is. He will never let you go.
Under the bed. Actually, here's a good question for you. Did you have a personal boogeyman or bogeyman in your closet as a kid?
I did. I lived in the attic, and we had this like attic bedroom that my parents had converted. My brother and I shared when I was a kid in Kansas. It was at the top of a long set of stairs. It was very spooky to me. And in my closet was a tiny door that was about this high. And that door just led to the attic where there was just insulation, right? It was one of those so gross and spooky in there and spiderwebby. And but it was this little closet door that no one explained to me as a kid either. And I used to have this recurring nightmare that this little person, Frankenstein's monster, would come out of that little door and it was the weird, and then he'd chase me down the stairs, and then I'd fall every time down the stairs in like slow motion, and I like couldn't get away. So that was my boogeyman. And my dad used to tell us the stories of this boogeyman he called Mr. Heek. I don't know where that name came from. I don't know who Mr. Heek was, but he'd say Mr. Heek. My dad was from Iran. He's passed now, but maybe it was some Iranian mythological creature. We'll have to look into this. Yeah. I'm sure if you're the person who's going to find this out is you, but he'd say, oh, be good, or Mr. Heek will come for you. Oh, God, that scared the crap out of me.
That is spooky. And yeah, my childhood home was like I think it was built in like probably the 1960s, just a ranch home in Florida. So we didn't have a basement, and we didn't have like another floor or anything, and no little doors, but there was just sort of this overall creepy vibe to it. And you telling that story makes me think of like, do you remember the film Cat's Eye, was it?
Yeah, with the shorts and vignettes.
Yeah.
And there was the little troll thing. Yeah.
That would like come and try to suck the girl's air out of her, and that thing terrified me.
Terrifying.
So maybe Mr. Hick was coming through the doors.
We're gonna have to do some research.
I don't know. With your father's background, did he ever talk about jinn or any folklore from around?
You know, he didn't. It was interesting. My father, immigrated to the U.S. and then he kind of, in a way, in a sad way, kind of shut the door on that part of his life. I think he wanted so much to assimilate into. We were in the Midwest. It was a very American culture. It was not a very inclusive area in which I grew up, and it was definitely not a place that seemed to have very positive opinions about the Middle East. This would have been in the early 80s and going into the 90s, and so he just didn't really talk much about it, but it was in my adulthood and in my growing appreciation, thanks to great teachers who would say, what is your last name? Do you know where you're from? What is your lineage? And I'd say, well, my mom's Irish and Italian and English, and my dad's from Iran. And they go, Iranian, do you know about the poets and the mythology and the great, wonderful history of fantastic literature? So the jinn, terrifying. I didn't learn about it from my dad, but in years since, I've become really entranced by all that mythology and the horrors of some of those stories.
Yeah, great stories and scary stories.
Very scary.
And very alive still in that culture. And, we did this panel earlier, Dark Horse Horror panel. And one of the questions I asked about was audiences being ready for this evolution, this expansion of other cultures and the horrors and the folklore from other cultures. Yeah. I think that's like a good example of it. I think people now have that appetite. They're wanting to move beyond just the ghosts and the goblins of North America and of Europeans. They kind of want to learn about the other stuff out there.
Agreed. I think that there's a moment that we can seize upon right now because horror is so explosively prolific and there's so many wonderful artists right now. And I think because of the access that we have to different films and filmmakers, I hope that young audiences in particular seem to be really like hungry for it. We're going to start getting interwoven into our lexicon, the mythologies, the monsters, the creatures that are creeping out of stories being told by Southeast Asian filmmakers and writers, and out of Iranian, if not in Iran, people of Iranian descent making great and wonderful horror and telling stories from that space. There's so much from all over the African continent that like there's stuff that's starting to finally pop all over South America. We're getting these filmmakers and these stories. And I think culturally even there's a lot of aspects to United States culture that isn't explored yet properly and hasn't been thoroughly explored through film and cinema. I think that people are, in one way, in the United States, opening more and more heart space, mind space, fan space too. And in another part, are really trying to shut the door on them. You know, there's a lot of people who are really scared of the other. They always have been, right? Doesn't this all go back to all of our favorite writers exploring those themes, people's fear of the other? And hopefully we can blow those doors open.
Well, and more so than other fandoms, other genre like superheroes or even science fiction, there's something about horror that when you tap into that horror of a people, you can create this cultural connective tissue with other people and then realize, oh, the goblins that scare you, the boogeyman that you were told about as a kid, maybe we called it a different thing, but it's very similar to the stories of the boogeyman that I grew up with.
Agreed.
And now we have this shared kind of bond.
Yep.
Horror can kind of bring people together.
It's fascinating when you look at world civ and world history and you're like, oh, the Gilgamesh epic is like the Noah mythology, is like all these other fantastic tales that so many cultures think are their own version of origin stories or et cetera, horror stories. And it's like, no, we all share fears of being ostracized. We all share fears of illness. We all share fears of death. We all share fears of violence. We all share fears of nature. We just dress them up differently and they sound different, but they're underneath that same pulsing thing. So it's exciting. And I hope that we continue through this trend of embracing culturally diverse ways of exploring story and mythology.
Well, along with kind of blowing the doors off of keeping out other legends and seeing those connections amongst people, this is going to be an awkward segue, but
where are we going here?
Well, in North America, the United States, we also tend to have sort of this awkward relationship with death,
mortality.
And we try to keep that contained and not talk about that. And maybe that's evolving a little bit. Maybe that's changing a little bit. And I kind of want to find out about this project that you're doing, which I think is part of this Titan Caskets sponsorship, right?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we just announced it yesterday. I never imagined in my career as an actor, writer, storyteller that I would be a brand ambassador for something. I mean, I did commercial work early in my acting career and I was, doing advertising, but to become a brand ambassador for a product or a company seems very foreign to me. But then when you say that it's caskets, I feel like that feels very in my wheelhouse. So when I was first approached by my friend Elon Gale, who's working with Titan Casket about the possibility of working with them to help, raise their profile and get exposure for this company, I thought, that's really funny. I kind of like that idea. It's very on brand for me, considering how much my go-to form of storytelling tends to live in the dark shadows and corners of horror and genre. But then I started learning about this company, Titan. I was thinking about the fact that with the recent, years, how many times I've been confronted with the death of someone that I cared about and trying to prepare their end of life, like celebration. And you're just presented with so few options. And this is a company that produces kick-ass caskets at somewhere between 50% all the way to like 80% less expensive than what most people are told are their only options. Often you're just presented, it's kind of like going to get a car, and it's not like you're always getting told the whole story. You're getting told truth because there's laws that bind people, but it's a lot of times you're presented with like, here's what you got, choose this. And this company, Titan, online, you can design the casket, it shows up, it's federal law. Any funeral home you go to, if you say, I want this casket to be here for the funeral for my loved one, they have to use it. And it's wild, man, when you look at like prices $5,000-$7,000, people are confronted with, well, these are your options. The truth is with Titan caskets, like $1,200, $1,500, like, so I'm really excited to be a part of helping spread the good word about them. And I just went to a warehouse the other day and just climbed around, and like, you think like, so this idea of like talking about death, normalizing our conversations about end of life, it's something we all are going to experience. We're all of our lives are going to end. I'm sorry to break it to you. Shocking. We've got a big reveal here at New York Comic Con 2023. This is it. We're all going to die. But so are people that we love. And being able to talk about that and normalize conversations about that is important.
It is kind of an important thing. I mean, I want to nerd out about other stuff, but I actually legitimately think that this is a worthwhile conversation because, look, ever since the American Civil War, death has become this booming industry and kind of squeezing people for all their worth when someone passes away. And as you said, it's like, what are you going to do? You got to buy a casket.
Yeah.
There's $5K right out. And then that doesn't include all the other costs. And like, what you going to do?
There's so few people that are in the market. And so it's really wonderful that Titan is like just disrupting the whole way business is done. And I hope especially like young people will think about this stuff. You know, it's something like I'm excited. I can design my own kick-ass casket on their website, but also like when you're stuck in that time of like, you're sad, you've lost someone you love, now you're having to make decisions, and it's just like, just knowing that you have options, it's always empowering, and it's healthy, and it's important. And although I'll tell you, when I go, I've always thought, I'll be cremated. Then I was like, no, I want my head removed and my skull preserved. And it's something we're working on figuring out how to make happen. I think that it'd be really cool for my skull to live on the mantle at the house for a little while. And then it needs to go to like my favorite theater so that actors doing Hamlet for years to come can perform the Yorick speech with my skull.
You're going to need a good protective coating in case you have a clumsy Hamlet that drops poor Yorick.
I didn't even think about that. You're right.
Okay, speaking of heads, I feel like we are joined by our two very silent guests here. We've talked about this on the Talking Strange show. These are the Immortal Masks based on Count Crowley, and we have Jerry right here and Hubert the Vampire. These things are, now that they already look cool. I'm seeing these bad boys in person. This is sexy and cool and incredible. Talk about it.
Yeah, so I'm so lucky. Immortal Masks, they are the premier silicone mask sculptors, designers, manufacturers. And it's like, it's so crazy. I wrote these characters, created these characters. Lucas Kettner, my collaborator on Count Crowley. I mean, the designs for the way our vampires look in Count Crowley, I give all that credit to Lucas. The look of Jerry Bartman as Count Crowley, I think it's really just, you can imagine, we're both Halloween kids. We're both horror kids. Like the fact that I have these characters now manifest as masks that anybody can buy on the internet and become these characters. And even if people don't know who Count Crowley is, if they don't even read my comic, that's okay, because Immortal Masks did such a kick-ass job with the design of these. You've never seen a vampire that looks like this before, or a ghoul that harkens that like 80s punk rock Susie Sue like specter. I mean, and it's mind-blowing.
And the flesh, like, this just feels incredibly like,
it feels real. It's so
like,
creepy.
But what's cool about it is it almost looks like there's this like almost fine layer of like hair, like very small like hair on it.
Yeah.
And and you could see just blood vessels, and it looks real. Is what I'm trying. I'm not a doctor. But this looks like real flesh.
Yeah.
And this baby, like,
Yeah. It's so cool. I'm so lucky. It's so wild. And I'm so grateful that this is a real thing. And I can't wait. We're introducing all new characters to the comic every new volume. And so it's like, excited to see where the Immortal Mask empire of Crowley masks will go.
Well, speaking of the new volume, we have Count Crowley, Mediocre Midnight Monster Hunter is dropping in November 8th. That sounds
November
about right.
8th, yes.
From Dark Horse Comics. And again, we've chatted about this, but I've now finally got to read the first issue. No spoilers here. But it seems like the world is expanding, but also getting messier. And we're getting some new levels of monsters being introduced in this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Well, I'm really, now that we're into a third volume, getting to go its full tilt. Jerry's now started her recovery journey, but confronted with all kinds of challenges that are going to, really upend what she thinks is her new grasp on life. You've got a vampire, if you read volume 2, that she was able to overcome, which was our dear Hubert here. But that's not necessarily going to put in to motion a lot of really good outcomes for Jerry, because there's other vampires now that are going to wonder what happened to Hubert and what the hell's going on in the Midwest, who are going to have to come in and figure things out. On top of that, I've introduced a whole new plot that is tied into our vampires in New York, what's going on in Beloit, that if you're a fan of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster and that concept of reanimated creatures, I'm hopeful you'll be excited by the new spin that I brought into that, as a number of bodies have gone missing from the local morgues. Plot that's very inspired by Frankenhooker. And then ghosts. Jerry has never had to confront anything spectral, no poltergeist yet. And I wanted to bring into the world what happens and how do the monster hunters deal with things that are not in physical flesh form.
There's also, whereas up till now we have seen a bit of the emergence of media and the kind of nefarious hold that media can have on society, which continues. But you introduced this other element that, for me, reminds me of being a kid in the 80s and Stranger Danger, and be it someone driving around in certain vehicles.
It's always a van. It's always a van.
It's always a van.
It's always an ice cream truck, man. Come on. It's always a van. Poor van owners. They all get maligned like that. You're in a van.
Especially if you're a clown that drives a van. It is a bad scene for you.
The Cooper, the old style of masks. I wanted that horror of the plastic mask boxed Halloween costumes meets the creepy grabber in the van mythology, which we all feared as kids.
It brought me back to being a kid, and just kind of the thing that creeped me out, or what my parents wanted me to be scared of. Yeah. And then also coming right up on October 18th is also from Dark Horse Comics, the Headless Horseman Halloween Annual, and you have a story in it, as well as I won't bring you on camera, but your artist is right off camera.
Sometimes they think the things that scare you the most are the ones left to the imagination. Well, it's not scary at all. Leah Kilpatrick, my co-writer on this anthological contribution to our story, which is Horror House. It is the last story in the Headless Horseman, the new anthology of horror from Dark Horse, edited by the great Megan Walker, who's my editor of Count Crowley and has edited Stan Sakai's books in the past, and is just an awesome editor. She curated this. The main cover done by Lucas Kettner, who also writes and draws a piece in there. Phil Sevy just did a piece for the Con exclusive. There's so many wonderful people who contributed to the book, but for Leah and I's, we wanted to tell a Halloween story. Involves a haunted house, some gallows humor, and a look at the world on Halloween night from maybe what the monsters are seeing.
Mm-hmm. It's clever. I enjoy it. And finally, I know you are a person who enjoys costumes, and you do it well. And
thank you.
Again, spooky season is year round for us monster kids. But with that said, any plans for Halloween, and do you have any costumes that you can talk about?
Oh, we're hard at work at the moment. We are deep in it. Leah and Eve and I just the other night were sitting crafting, watching Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, while working on projects. I'm making some tentacles that aren't necessarily for my costume, but because I think they make cool Halloween decorations out of old pool noodles.
Oh, yeah.
And the three of us are working on a team costume. I don't want to spoil it yet because we're entering a costume contest with it that should be a surprise, but I will say I'll be playing a character that was brought to life by Vincent Price in a very specific location where, oh boy, I guess that's the only clue I can give you guys. You're just going to have to stay tuned to my Instagram account and see what it is when we post, because we're going to hopefully take this costume contest by storm. But I will be hopefully bringing it to life, and with Leah's help. Have you ever seen her Instagram and the makeups that she does? Like her zombie Captain America. Oh my God, they're insane. She's such a great makeup artist. So she's doing my makeup. That's enough hints.
Depending on when this all gets posted and put out there, we'll probably request some photos and we'll insert the photos of it. Yes. So that's pretty cool. I'm very excited about that. And also John Carpenter was at New York Comic Con. Did you get a chance to talk to him?
No.
I did.
Wow. Of course you did. Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
Wow.
But David, speaking of people that are awesome to talk to, it's always awesome to talk to you.
So awesome to talk to you. You are one of the smartest people in horror, and I love how much you know about all of this stuff. This isn't just a job to you. I know it's your passion. So thanks for always diving in with me.
Far too kind, my friend. And okay, well, I know you've got a lot of cool stuff on the way. I'm going to let you get to it. Thanks for joining us in the Den of Geek Studios.
Season.
Happy spooky season.